Orlando von Einsiedel, you directed the documentary Virunga, which was recently shortlisted for an Oscar nomination for Best Documentary. Had you been anticipating the announcement of that shortlist?
No, I mean, from our side, we're just incredibly humbled that people like our film, or seem to like our film, and to be part of the shortlist is incredible because it helps magnify the messages and the story of what's happening in this incredibly important place in Eastern Congo, the Virunga National Park. So, we're honoured to be part of that list, and we hope that it will help spread the word about Virunga to as wide an audience as possible.
And it's impressive just making the shortlist because there were 134 eligible documentaries submitted for consideration. So just making the top 15 is kind of significant. Have you been able to keep up with any other documentaries this year, or have you just been focused on your own this film?
I mean, it's definitely been an incredibly busy 9 months since we launched at Tribeca, and it's kept me very, very busy on the road. But of course, I've tried as often as possible to watch some of the other amazing films that are out this year. And there are some brilliant films out there, and to be a lot of my favourite ones made the list as well. So it's an honour to be amongst them.
Documentary feature is sort of unique at the Oscars. It's one of a few categories that has, a semi-finalist round where it comes down to a short list and then another round for the nominations. And documentary feature has had, some changes to its rules and procedures over the years. Do you have any thoughts about, the current Oscar process for selecting documentaries?
Do you know what? I don't. I mean, I'm a newbie to this. If I'm completely honest, this is my first feature film. So I can't say I'm particularly knowledgeable about the ins and outs of the voting process. Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on it.
Well, this film, Virunga, it tells the story of the protected Virunga National Park in the Congo, which has been under threat from rebels and the oil company looking to exploit its resources. How did you first decide to become involved in this story, or how did your interest come about?
Sure. So as a filmmaker, I mainly work in African countries. It's a part of the world I deeply care about, and I think everyone has somewhere where they have an affinity with. That's where I like to work, and tended to be in West Africa. And for a long time I've been wanting to try and tell a positive story from Eastern Congo. It's a country where it tends to be that the narratives which come out of there tend to be very negative about sexual violence or conflict, and obviously those are very important stories to tell, but other narratives exist. And one day I picked up a newspaper article, and there was a story about these rangers risking their lives to rescue mountain gorillas, and they were working in this place called the Virunga National Park, and it had volcanoes and gorillas and mountains with glaciers, and I'd never even heard of this place, and it was like Jurassic Park. And this park was also pushing forward these development projects which are about bringing peace and jobs and stability to the region. So I went out to try and tell that story of rebirth, and I hadn't been on the ground long when the war started, and I learned about this oil company, and so the story took this big U-turn. And I think as a documentary maker, though, you need to be quite flexible. You need to be able to allow the story to lead you in different directions, and that is certainly what happened here.
Yeah, I mean, just over the course of the film, we see how that oil company, Soco International, and the rebel group, they start to really encroach, and there's a sense of danger there. Obviously with these different interests trying to almost sometimes forcibly make their way onto the land. Did you ever feel like your own personal safety was at risk?
Yeah, I mean, I was regularly very, very frightened making this film. It was a very dangerous film to make, not just for me when combat came to where we were, but Melanie and Rodrigue, the two characters in the film who go undercover, they risk their lives regularly, and then just the Rangers as a whole, 140 of them have died in the last 15 years protecting this park, and since we finished filming, you know, the park's lost a ranger every month. So there was a lot of elements making this film that were incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, and a couple of the people you mentioned, Rodrigue and Melanie Gooby, and also you follow Emmanuel de Merode, who is the director of the park, and the gorilla caretaker, Andre Bauma. How did you decide on these four individuals specifically to decide to follow in the film, or did that come about naturally, just as the course as you were following the story?
Well, I mean, to begin with, I was probably following about 10 different characters right at the beginning, and you know, because I had an idea about what this film might look like, but I wasn't 100% sure how it was going to evolve. So you know, you follow different people to see what happens, and then as time went by, I just sort of started to gravitate more towards those four, because each one started to tell a particularly unique part of the bigger picture. So Andre was protecting the gorillas, Emmanuel was running the park, and Rodrigue and Melanie were really leading the investigative work that we were doing. So it ended up being them. I mean, you know, that ended up happening quite naturally that it became those four.
In following the different people involved in different events and different places, how much footage did you actually shoot yourself, and how many other people were involved in capturing in the actual footage of the film?
Yeah, sure. So I spent 2 years making this film, and I spent a year living in the park in a tent. There's like this tented camp, and I spent the first year alone because we didn't have any money, and so you know the easiest way to do that was just to have me there with a small camera. About a year in, I brought an assistant producer to work with me out on location, and then right towards the end, I got a cinematographer, Franklin Dow, to join us to shoot some of the kind of bigger landscape sequences and some of the nicer shot footage of animals. So it was a very, very small team for virtually the entire production process.
You mentioned some of those wider shots, those you know, there are these, you know, sweeping aerial shots and panoramic shots in the film. You mentioned the cinematographer. Did he shoot all of that? Were you present for any of that? Really splendid footage of just the natural landscape.
Well, I think I had definitely a natural advantage. I mean, that park, Virunga National Park, is so beautiful that I probably could have filmed a lot of it on a mobile phone, and it still would look really good. So I definitely had that on my side. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I was with Franklin the entire time that he was shooting, and I should actually say we also had an aerial cinematographer join us for 10 days, and we rigged a kind of gyroscope camera to the park has its own plane, and we rigged this camera to the plane and spent a week flying around. And it had been really, up until that point, it had been really rainy and cloudy, and we were terrified that we'd invested all this money in bringing this camera over. But the day he arrived to start this shoot, the weather cleared. It was almost like the park was opening itself up and saying, "Come on, film me and make me look good."
I mean, that sounds like, you know, just flying over this park and just capturing the natural beauty of it. Was that maybe one of the highlights of the production for you?
You know, I mean, the real highlights are meeting all of the amazing people, and I've been, you know, people like Andre and Rodrigue. It's a deeply humbling experience my entire life. Meeting these people, you know, it's weird. One of the things I've sort of come away with most of all is how, you know, I think there's things that we all care about in our lives, but how many of us would actually lay down our lives for something that we believe in? And with the Rangers, you know, that's so many of them do that. They will literally every day they get up knowing they might make the ultimate sacrifice for something bigger than themselves. And that is, I think, coming away with that, and that makes you want to be a better person as well. I think that's probably the sort of deepest experience that I've come away with. But certainly filming the aerials on that shoot, it was truly quite a magic week.
Another very important part of the film, is the plight of the mountain gorillas that live in Virunga, and we spend a lot of time with the four gorillas, specifically under Andre Bauma's care. I was wondering what you learned about them, or maybe came away with after spending so much time with the gorillas that you maybe didn't know before, didn't understand before.
Sure. So, as a filmmaker, but prior to this film, I've done virtually nothing with animals before. So I went in quite naively, and it may sound cliche to say it, but coming face to face with a mountain gorilla, it really is quite life changing. They are so similar to us, and the thing that used to always get me is in the mornings they get given porridge for breakfast, and they are served it in a mug, and they hold that mug and they drink it just like a human would drink a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and it's incredible. And their fingernails look just like ours, and when you look at them deep in the eyes, you just feel a connection. I think King Kong has given gorillas a bad reputation as being these kind of violent animals, but they are so gentle, and they seem to have so many of our best traits and fewer of our worst traits.
Speaking of our worst traits, Soco International, whom you depict in this film, trying to exploit oil in Virunga, the film is very critical of them. Were you, or are you still perhaps concerned about reprisals, retaliation, financial, being sued? Have you been sued by them?
No, we haven't been sued. I mean, we were definitely apprehensive before we launched this film. We had a very lively discussion with their lawyers. I mean, this is $1 billion company, one of Britain's biggest companies. But ultimately, I stand by the journalism in this film. And if it wasn't 100% right, we'd have left ourselves open to be sued. But there's nothing for them to sue, and I think they know that. They know that these. I mean, what you see in the film are recordings that haven't been doctored with. Those conversations all took place. So viewers can make up their own mind after seeing it whether or not they believe it. But in terms of real danger, the danger remains on the ground in the park. I mean, people opposing oil exploration are still receiving death threats. I mean, only yesterday we were sent a load of messages from activists working in the area with very, very serious death threats being sent to them by people who support Soco and want their exploration for oil to continue to take place.
How much can you tell us about what developments have taken place in Virunga, in the region, since the film was released? Has there been progress? Have there been any major setbacks that are discouraging, maybe, or encouraging anything?
Yeah, so there's a mixture. There's some really positive things and there's some really negative things. The positive things are that since we finished filming, the M23 rebel group, who are the main rebel group you see in the film, they actually got pushed out of the park. And that meant the security situation has improved dramatically, so much so that guerrilla tourism's reopened in Virunga. So everyone watching this, you should all go and buy a ticket to go and visit the mountain gorillas, which you can do. And it's already booked up until April next year. So that's very positive. And tourism is one of the key ways that people can actually help contribute to the economic stability and peace in Eastern Congo, and this is a part of the world which has had 20 years of war. So that's all very positive. On the negative side, this oil issue still hangs like a very dark cloud over the park. Soco International have not answered the allegations put to them, and they have not withdrawn from the park unconditionally. They made an announcement in June 2004 of this year that they were going to halt their operations. But it's not quite what it seems when you first read it. They're currently analysing the results of their exploration, and if the results are positive, if there's a large amount of oil there, then they could come back in and actually start to exploit oil. So positive things about the security situation, but very negative in terms of the future with regards to oil.
Do you think maybe the exposure that this film is getting now, streaming on Netflix, on the Oscar shortlist, potential nomination there, do you think, if Soco has any intention of going back in and extracting oil from Virunga, that it might actually discourage them, maybe?
I sincerely hope so, and I mean it's not. I not just hope so. I know that what's happening with the film and the pressure that's putting on Soco, it's having an effect. I mean, we decided to partner up with Netflix because of their reach. The service goes out to 53 million homes in 50 countries. They're the biggest distributor for a documentary in the world. And we wanted as many people as possible to see this film. And on top of that, we've also really been screening the films to strategic audiences. So we've screened in about 10 different parliaments around the world. We've screened to the business community. A lot of Soco's own shareholders have been requesting us to screen the film to their employees and to other shareholders. So we know that what the film says, the messages that are in the film, we know it's working. We know that pressure is building on Soco, and they're still there. The park isn't safe yet, but we do believe that the film is having a big effect, and we're optimistic that in the end this company will do the right thing.
You mentioned how wide the reach of Netflix was, and it seems to me also that not just for this film but for documentaries in general, Netflix it might be one of the best outlets in years, in a long time, maybe ever, for documentaries as a genre. Is that something that you've noticed as well, that documentaries are really having sort of a golden age thanks to these kinds of distribution methods?
I mean, I personally, I personally do believe that. I think there's a few things, a lot of people say, oh, but didn't you want to have a theatrical release for your film? And actually, Netflix supported a theatrical release. We did a theatrical run in the UK, and then we did one in New York and Los Angeles. And I know Netflix did that with a load of other documentaries that they took on too. I think the main thing though is that it's somewhere where you can find documentaries. There's so many documentaries that I love that I actually find quite hard to find them online. And I think that's very positive that a lot of these films are ending up on Netflix, where they do potentially live forever and they can be watched at any time in the day. And that's that's really, really positive.
One of the executive producers of the film is actor Leonardo DiCaprio, and I just wanted to know if you could tell me, what his interest in this film was and how he came to be involved.
Absolutely. So Leonardo is a conservationist. He's been supporting conservation issues for a long time, and he saw this film early on, just after we released it at Tribeca, and he got in touch. I mean, literally one day I had an email from someone called Leonardo DiCaprio, and I was reading this email with one of my colleagues, and I was like, oh, someone called Leonardo DiCaprio has just emailed me, and lo and behold, it was actually him. And he said, look, I think this film is about important issues. It's about bigger things than just what's happening in this park. What's at stake here are protected areas the world over, because he recognized that if home to the last of the world's mountain gorillas, a World Heritage Site, Africa's oldest national park, if somewhere that iconic was destroyed by corporate interests, what on this planet can be protected? So he got behind it, and for us, it's incredible, because he brings an audience who otherwise might not be interested in a film about Africa and a film about Congo. And he's brought a lot of press attention, and and that for us is amazing. We're working with the world's biggest distributor and the world's biggest actor, so it's sort of a dream come true for us, with a film with an issue we deeply care about and we want the world to know about.
Well, I wanted to say congratulations on the film, and streaming on Netflix and being on the Oscar shortlist, potential for an Oscar nomination. And thank you very much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having us on your show, and good to talk.